Okay, today I want to take apart the steering wheel of this 1991 Cadillac Deville. What the problem is the wiper blade, or the wiper switch, is kind of getting worn out. So when you turn the wiper delay on, the switch, the high-low switch works fine, but it's the intermittent part of the switch. It is, you can barely adjust it. It's either on real fast or it's on real slow, and sometimes you move it around and it'll almost stop. I took it to get inspected the other day. I don't know what the guy did, but he made it worse when they inspected it. Now you move that knob around a little bit and the windshield wipers will stop right in the middle. So anyway, looking at the owner or the shop manual for this car, first thing it does is it says to, of course, disconnect the negative side of the battery. There was my heater shutting off. Forgot to wait for that. So I unhooked the battery, and then down here in the fuse panel, there's a couple different fuse panels in this car, but the one underneath here I took and number 18 fuse, I removed it out. You can see right here it was a 10 amp fuse. It said to pull that, and then the next thing I'm going to do is it has this yellow airbag wiring here, and I'm going to pull that connector and disconnect the airbag wire. So hopefully my camera will stay there. I'm going to pull out this little locking mechanism, push in on that connector, and there is the airbag is now disconnected. So after doing all that, the manual states to wait 10 minutes before starting to work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and remove the airbag itself. There's 4 screws here in the back. I'm going to move those out. And then it says to carefully take the airbag and lay it in some area that you're not going to be knocking around. Don't drop it while you're moving it. Be very careful. I don't know if the thing could really set itself off or not, but hey, why not follow directions? So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to come back 10 minutes from now. I'll take apart take the screws out and move the airbag to a safe location. Okay, here's going to be the parts hopefully going to be putting in. Ordered this from Advanced Auto. It is the actual wiper switch. Okay, you can see right in there, right here in the center is where it twists back and forth. The pot is in there, and then there's this lever that it you pull your headlights on and off. I didn't really need this, but mine was kind of wore out. I got the switch from Advanced Auto, and then this arm here I got it from Rock Auto. It's can't remember the name of the company, but you know, they wanted about $100. Everybody else did, and this is a different. It's a company out of India, so I hope it works okay. But it has the on, off, resume, accelerate, wiper delay. So I'm hoping all that works, and I hope this switch. There was 2 switches. One was about $20 cheaper, but it said they both were exact fits. So I hope it works. Okay, so to get the screws out of the back, it took a T25 Torx bit. Okay, I thought it was maybe going to be a Phillips or something, but ended up being a T25. So now I open this puppy up and let's see what we have here. Looks like we've got a ground strap here, a ground clip, and then we've got the connector for the igniter, or the whatever you want to call it. Okay, next I've got a 21 millimeter metric socket. I'm taking off this middle nut here. I'm not sure what those threads are. They appear to be standard though. I'm not sure, but they're about 3/8 coarse threads. So, but I'm not sure about that. I don't really know for sure. But anyway, I put this on here and used my long ratchet, and it broke pretty easy. Like I say, I had this wheel off 2 or 3 years ago to fix that blinker. So as you can see, it's coming off. So I'm going to go ahead and take the puller off, and then we'll pull the wheel here in a minute. So getting ready to pull the wheel. So as the wheel is sitting here, I think it's keyed. It can only go on one way. But here you can see this ground wire goes through that hole, and then the power or the airbag goes through the great big hole. So that's going to lift off there. It's going to pull through, and let me fish this ground wire through. So what you have here is right on top of the wheel. I don't know if you can see it real well or not. There is a space that it is keyed, so it can only go on one way. So if you look down, the spline on the actual steering wheel has that key, that extra wide spot in the spline. So there is only one way to go. Okay. So now the next thing there is the clock spring. So I'm going to have to remove the clock spring. And it looks like it has a snap ring in there, so I'm going to have to pull off the snap ring and then remove the clock spring. Okay, so I've taken a pair of snap ring pliers, and I've got the snap ring that's holding in the clock spring. I have it's popped off, so now I'm just going to take a pair of needle nose and pull it out the rest of the way. Okay, so I have the snap ring. Now this clock spring pulls out. I'm not sure how it comes out. Looks like the I don't know if it's also keyed, but it looks like this wire for the steering or for the airbag needs to move, but it seems to be pretty doggone tight. I guess it doesn't move. As I'm pulling this out, whoops, there goes my ground wire. So my ground wire was just, okay, it was pushed into this hole here, and that was all kind of just held in there. So you're looking at this again. I guess that just lays in there. Not sure what, oh, okay, I see. So this thing has oh, you push in and it has a locking mechanism there. So on that ground, it locks down. So now that comes off, and there you have it. So what you're going to do, you're going to screw that adapter down on the shaft tight. You're going to screw this bolt in to that adapter as tight as you can. Then you're going to line up on that big washer there. Get a better light here, sorry about this. But on that big washer, you're going to line up on it on the outside, get a good straight where you're not going to hit anything and ruin it, and keep away from your airbag. And you're going to tighten down this nut. You're going to tighten the nut down, and then you're going to take a wrench and tighten that down, and as you do, that's going to push that spring, that big washer, down, and then that will expose that snap ring that's in there right there. So we're going to push our way down, pull the snap ring out, and then that will bring out that assembly. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so it only took about, probably 4 turns, and it pushed it down there. And so there's the snap ring. So I need to get in there with a pair of probably a scratch awl or a little screwdriver and pop that thing out. So I'll see what happens. Okay, so now I've gotten that snap ring out and I've backed off on the puller. So now I need to take the puller all the way off, and then that snap ring will come off. Boy, that's a nasty little snap ring. Too bad I guess it wasn't any way to use a regular snap ring. And I've seen this before. I'm sure it works out well. It's just tough to get out. I bet it'll be tough to get back on. And it also hits the where the snap ring for the clock spring was. So you get it stuck in that hole, and you got to work it on out of that hole to the end. Okay, so now I'm going to take this little, what do you want to call this? Flange, washer, I don't know what you call it. Take it off. Like I say, it's going to line up with the hole of the ground strap. And then this must come off. So really that just went on there. It's not keyed or anything, but that big washer keeps it in position. So you're going to have it up there at about that 10 o'clock area. So I can start to see the some of the switch stuff, but I'm still not real sure what I got to take out next. It looks like I have to take this switch assembly. Now what broke on me a few years ago is this little spring right here. One of these springs, it broke, and that was what caused me, it wouldn't cancel anymore. So somehow when this thing comes around, it cancels with that spring and causes your blinker to cancel. So somehow I'm going to have to take this, there's that this little thing here. I guess that goes against this plate. Yeah, it rides against the, I guess it rides against the plate. Now that is keyed there somewhat. Now I guess it doesn't ride against the plate. It, oh, you know what that is? That's the lock. Sorry about that. That's the lock, so when you turn the key, that pulls in. So that is your lock to lock your wheel. So let me understand this a little bit more, and we'll be back. Okay, it appears that I have to take off the emergency flasher also. So that has a #1 Phillips screw in it. So I think if I just screw that out, that assembly will come out. Okay, so here is, I'm not sure. You got those black screws that are in the yellow plastic. Those have to come out of there. Now it shows a couple other screws, or one other screw, but it really doesn't talk how to get it out. Or it doesn't really, I don't even see it. So I'm going to start taking some stuff apart. Maybe I can figure it out. I'll get back to you. Okay, so inside here, there was a screw here at this position and at this position down here. So what it told you to do was to turn the blinker up like you're making a right-hand turn, and that would expose this screw here. So I loosened up these 3 screws, and then there was 2 screws here, 2 silver screws. These 3 were black, all Phillips. So this screw up here was a longer silver screw, is about 1 inch long, and down below here is the screw is about 3/8 of an inch long. So I removed those screws, and what this does is this brings out an arm here that has a lot of grease on it, and it rides, you can't really see, but it rides in that switch. So I'm going to lay it up here on the dash, and that rides, like I say, in the switch. Maybe I can get in here and get a close shot of it, but there's a groove there with all that grease, and that's just helping hold the switch, and it helps hold it in position. And as you switch the switch up and down, right or left turn, that turns this black switch assembly that makes it turn into a right or left hand turn. Okay, now I'm going to take out the yellow part of the switch. I think the black and the yellow all sticks together. At least I'm hoping it does. And that's going to come out of here. And then that's going to expose that switch. Maybe. We'll see here shortly. I'll be back. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this little piece of trim here. And then that exposes a couple of probably T15, T10 or T15 torque screws. So I'm going to remove that, and that's going to let this panel come down. Because I think what's happening is the emergency flasher switch is getting hung up, the wire for it. I can't pull it up through. So I'm going to try to see if I can help it up through underneath the column. Okay, a lot has changed since my last transmission. So what I had to do to get that cable, I guess I'm going to have to do this anyway, but to get this cable to come up through the steering column, I had to get down underneath the dash, in behind the fuse panel, and maybe you can see that connector way up there that's unplugged. I had to get this plugged, that 9/32 nut driver, to take that apart, pull this out, and now I can take these 2 flat cables and start pushing them up the steering column. Now, this poor old Cadillac, one thing you'll notice here, I got a resistor. My pass key thing, my lock broke a long time ago, and I read somewhere on the internet about measuring the resistance of the key, the little pellet, and then putting the resistor in line with it. So that was that orange wire here, and I cut that, and that comes down here. So anyway, that's why you see that orange wire laying there, is because the pass key, if I want to make a key for my car now, I don't need it. Now you can see as I slide that wire up, it's starting to come out the column now, which is a good thing. It's what I want. So now, if I can get this switch assembly up and out of there, then I'll be able to take a look. Another thing, when you go to take out that 9/32 screw, it's really far back there, so you'll need a ratchet with like 2 or 3 extensions. It's really hard to get to. So I'm going to try to feed that up through there some more. Okay, now I've taken the 1 flat cable, pushed it way up there, so I've got this whole blinker assembly. It is pushed out. Blinker assembly, and it's the emergency road hazard switch. So now, looking inside here is the switch for the blinker, or the wiper, and, well, not the blinker, but it's the wiper switch. So I'm gonna have to figure out how that comes apart. My other light here. Sorry it's so dark. But as you can see, it pivots here, and then that, as it pushes that plunger right here, that is the high beam light switch. Okay, so this assembly that is right here is what I need to get apart. I don't know if this screws out there where that pivot is, or if that just pulls out. But the light switch I don't have to worry about, the high beams, low beams. It's just the switch. So looking at the new switch here, it appears, I don't know if there's, somehow there's a shaft that goes through there. I don't know if that's a screw or if that's a pin, some kind of a roll pin or something. Well, I don't know. Anyway, I got to do some more investigation. Okay, so I wasn't sure. Got my heater running in the background, sorry about that. I wasn't sure what I'd have to do next, but I believe what has to come out, this little switch here activates, I believe, when your key goes in. I'm not sure. That switch, I think, pulls out. So, and then this screw here, this torque screw here, loosen it up, and that will bring out the key assembly. And then this torques, and this torques down here will lift this housing out, and that will enable. So I think this pulls straight out here. Well, ooh, yeah. So that must be when the key hits there, that gets power to it when you when it all goes together. So hopefully I'll remember to put that back in. I guess it really wouldn't matter a whole lot. So next, with this Torx screw, what size it is, a 20, 25. There's a T20. That is really tight. So now I believe when this comes out, then the lock assembly should be able to come out. Lay that up on the dash. Ooh. Oh, this has that wire for the pass key. Now, if you remember earlier from my video below, that pass key, really I don't use it anymore because it the resistor in there went bad, I would have had to change this out. So what I did is bypassed it. So I believe this cable will just pull right up through here. It's already been cut off. Yeah, look there. There's where the cable broke. So really, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. I don't think it's going to matter. At least I hope it doesn't matter. But I've got it bypassed down below. Now, if you didn't have that done, you would have to take care and not do that. So there's my key lock. Now I need to lube that up because I have had some trouble with that being. So this wire, like I say, was cut off. I don't need to worry about that anymore. So the next thing to do is to undo these big Torx screws that hold this whole outer housing, this housing here. Now once I get that off, then I'll be able to, there's a pin right down here where this thing pivots that all this has to come apart for. Huh. Really not very tight. Not at all. Kind of almost not loose, but definitely not real tight. Okay, as I started to pull this off, this kind of switch assembly started to come apart. So what I need to do is the tilt arm, it unscrews. So I put on some rubber gloves. I was able to break it loose. Looks like it's had some Loctite or something on the threads. But anyway, it unscrews and I had to use like gloves to get a good grip. I didn't really want to put a wrench on it. So now I'm going to try to pull this the rest of the way off, but then the cables get short, so I'm not sure. Oh wow. It gets worse as it goes along. So anyway, as I was taking it apart, this piece here dropped out of this assembly. I think it goes onto this little side cover there. And I believe where this goes is right here. What that is that's kind of the actuator for your high beam switch. So in this little cover here, there's a place where this can slide along and it is curved. So the switch is just this metal rod here you can take and push it with your finger. There's the high beam, low beams. So it's just a rod that goes down to the switch must be down below. So pretty chintzy looking, but I guess it's worked for a long time, 27 years. So anyway, now I've got that off. So the whole assembly now is pretty well apart. Over here, not much going on. There's the thing that turns the ignition switch. So now I have to figure out how to get this all apart here. And then once I get that apart, it's going to be, it looked like a good little job just to get the wires. I don't know if you have to take more stuff apart. They have to take that whole assembly out to get the wires to go down in there. So this could be still ugly, ugly, ugly. So stay tuned. This rod here was the rod for the that went up through, and that's what locks your steering wheel. So when you turn your key, that turns this gear that pulls this out of the way, and that unlocks your steering wheel from that steering wheel lock. So anyway, I'll keep digging. Okay, coming underneath the dash here, it was pretty easy getting this connector apart, but I didn't realize the connector that I'm using also has that resistor. So this had this little fingers stuck down inside this connector. So I had to pop that off. It's got a couple little clips there. Just put a screwdriver in there. That pulls out fairly easy. Now the hard part's going to be getting those two pins out of there. They've got to come out of there and go into the new connector. So there's my old connector with the orange passcode wires. I got to get that back in there, and then this whole thing slides back up into this connector here. You can just see this catch right here catches on the connector. So, and then that whole thing's got to pull up through the steering column and come out. So I'm not sure if this knuckle where it tilts, the tilt wheel, has to also come out. I hope not. So at any rate, I'm going to try to get those pins out and get that passcode key thing off to the side so I can pull out the wire. Okay, so on this connector, it appears that the trick is here where it plugs in on the plug-in side. You take and need more hands. Maybe you'll be able to see it here. You take a small screwdriver like this and you insert it at the top of the connector, and then you can there's a little tab inside there, and it has to kind of let loose of it, and you take the other finger and be pulling out on that wire, and it comes loose. So like on this black one, it takes a little bit to get it, but it'll pop out. And then, like I say, the new one you don't have to worry about, except you got to get the pass key back in there. So I bent it up a little bit getting it out. I hope I can, it all goes back in okay. So looking at this thing, I don't think there's any way that connector is going to pull down through there. Now I think if you took off the whole knuckle joint, the joint there where the tilt wheel is, so maybe my next best thing to do is to try to take apart this connector, tape all the wires up, pull out the old one, just cut off the end, pull out the old one, and then pull it back in with tie a wire, a string to it, pull it back in, and then put the connector back together. I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. That's what I'm going to do, because it's just too tight to get in there. Stay tuned. Okay, so looking at the connector here, I'm getting ready to take it apart. So there's the little tab on the bottom, and the tab on the bottom then has that kind of connector there that helps keep them all pushed in there, keeps them locked in. And then you have the red, gray, blue, black, then the big wires, white, gray, green, purple, and pink. And then there's two empty slots, and then at the very end is going to be that pass key connector, and it's a resistor, so it shouldn't matter the polarity, which side. So I'm going to try to take these apart. I don't know. I hope it works out. Okay, so what I ended up doing is on the new switch that I got at AutoZone, Advanced Auto, sorry, I just took the connector and I unhooked it, took all those pins out. I'm going to cut the old wire off, the connector off, because it's just, I taped it up and tried to pull a wire up through, it's just too tight. I mean, I think I have to take a lot more stuff apart to try to get it up through. So I'm going to cut those wires off, use my pull wire, pull it up, wire these up, suck it back down in, and then put the connector on. At least that's my plan. Now, it may fail, but I got to do something. I got to move on. So, wish me luck. I'll let you know. Okay, so maybe hard to see this, but I did cut the wires off. I did pull up through, so now I've got a pull wire. It was pretty darn hard just getting it back up through, so it's going to be interesting getting it pulled down, and then I'm going to have to really be careful, because on this one it didn't matter. On the new one I'll have to be super gentle. I don't want to mess up any of those ends. Okay, so I figure it's very important that I put these wires, route them back the way they came. So, anyway, it goes over this top here and then into the switch, and then that little the wires for the cruise control, they went on this little side panel here that helps hold the bracket for the high-low beam lights. So I've got to take this shaft out right here. Hopefully that'll let that switch go out, and I can pull the wires back up, around, and through. So it's going to be tight. Okay, as I took that connector apart, it just goes in the hole. It stays up towards the top of this thing. So that connector on the new arm just goes in the hole and around. That's all there is to it. So remember that. So now the switch now, I pulled the pin, so it's ready to come out. And then I'm going to pull the wires back through. So we'll see. Okay, one thing, I finally got the wire pulled down in, and like I said, I took the ends off. One thing I didn't know that helped me a lot is there is a kind of a Teflon or a nylon piece of plastic up here on the top that you can pull out, and there's one down below. So if you reach down in where the wires go clear at the bottom of the steering column, there's like a plastic sheath or something that helps protect the wires. So once I took that out, that made it a lot easier to get the wires back in. Same thing with this top one right here. This one just kind of, I don't know if I can show you very easy or not. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with it, but it did pull right out. It's kind of snapped back in there now, but that's a little protector, so I took that off and the one underneath, and that made it a lot better. So what I'm doing right now is I've taken and put white assembly grease all over the place. So really I'm getting ready to put it back together now. So I need to push in the blinker arm, or at least get it in there and wire it up, and then put this thing back together and start working the other way now, thank goodness. So, and then too, once I get it all back together, that'll make my cable longer. Now I'll still have to get underneath and put that connector back together and try to get everything back together there. So I don't know how that'll go. So I'm far from being done, but another thing I did is on my key lock, I took it and squirted it with lube. You could probably, there's a roll pin and stuff in there, you could probably take that thing apart and grease it up good, but I'm kind of afraid of taking it apart. And then you can see there where my wires were that I just cut off for that pass key. So I may put some more assembly lube, that white lithium grease, on there when I put it back in. but you could take it apart and grease it all up too. Now one thing here, there's like a large tab at the bottom and a short tab at the top. The reason I know that is when I stuck my key in, that's the way it ended up going. I thought the big tab was at the top, but it turns out the little tab goes to the top. So now I'm going to start trying to put it back together, and like I say, I have to put the new knob on, or new arm. So I have to work the wire up through, and with that, it just basically went right up through here and then connected together. So I'm going to put that together, and then I'm going to try to stick this thing back. So I wish I could hold the camera, but I can't. So stay tuned again. You can kind of get a feel for that little cover. It doesn't have to go back on yet, but it that helps you get it lined up a little better. Okay, so now I've taken my T30. I tighten that bolt, and this, well, screws, sorry. And that puts me back into alignment, or that tightens up this main housing here. One thing, well, maybe I thought this pen would come out more. I'll have to watch that. Maybe it comes out more when you put the key lock in. So that's my next job, is to add the key ignition, or the lock set, whatever, I don't know what you call it. So I'm going to add some lube to it, and then we'll be screwing in this one small screw that holds it in position. Okay, luckily I was just looking at the high slow beam switch, dimmer switch, and it appears to be stuck back there. It's not coming out to the to where the wiper switch hits it. So I'm gonna have to take this housing back off, take a look. Something's not right. I don't know what it is. So I have to take my lock back out, take these number 30 Torx out, lift that back off, and see what's going on. So what I did when I took this back apart, I just didn't have that lined up well enough with the dimmer switch. So that dimmer switch, this thing has to be, like I say, this comes off like this, and that dimmer switch is just this metal rod, and if you look down, can't really see it, but you'll see the dimmer switch goes in a hole. It's just a rod. The switch is down below there, and that rod just lines up and goes right in the center. So I've got this kind of lined up again. Now I'm just going to stick that back up on there, and hopefully it'll stay. So what I did there, I had to the wiper, the dimmer switch, that little gray plunger, little arm, it pushes down on that dimmer switch, and that dimmer switch wasn't in position. So when I put this whole big housing on the outside here, I had to reach in with a little screwdriver and move that little plunger over so it would go against the housing. Now that it's against the housing, it'll rest against that housing, and that'll keep it in position. So next I'm going to put the screws back in, the ignition switch, and then start from there. Okay, the next thing that goes in is going to be the door chime, or the key chime, that is. So right next to that, on the right, that silver Torx head screw, there's a hole in there, and that's where this chime goes. So unfortunately I don't have good lighting, so I can't show it to you as I put it in. So there it kind of pushes in, and then it just make sure my key wasn't in. So anyway, now when I stick the key in, that'll make up that chime. And somehow it completes the circuit there when everything's shoved together. So at any rate, there's the little key chime in position. So, okay, next I went ahead and put in the blinker switch. So that screw, and then Phillips down below. Pushed all the wires back in. That just leaves the airbag wire. Now at some point too, maybe I've forgotten it already, is that the ground switch, I don't think so yet, but the switch that holds the ground wire for the horn on. So I think the next thing to go on is this plate here, and it needs some grease. And what it does is it goes on the arm of the blinker, and then it mounts right here, and that screw hole and that screw hole, and then that's what's going to actuate this. So when you flip your blinker up and down, this arm here is going to move it. So I'm going to lube it up here. It's got some lube on it. We're going to put some more lube on it, and then screw those two screws in. Now it used two flathead screws into that plastic. Here's what they look like. The long one goes on top, the short one goes on the bottom, if I remember right. So put that on next. Okay, now I've got the switch in there, and you turn the, that feels right. Like I say before, a few years ago, I had one of these springs break. I got the little packages like at Advance Auto called Help, and it's like $2. Of course, it's a huge job to tear this thing down, to cancel, to get that out, but that thing cancels. Now, one thing I did notice too, I thought, well, okay, while I'm at it, I'll try my high beam switch. Well, it wasn't working right. So what happened was I had to take the lid off back here, this lid, and the wires where I had them, they were between the switch and the housing. So it wasn't letting me pull all the way. So now it feels pretty good and it's clicking. So I think that's okay. So next I'm going to put some grease here on the switch and this mechanism, kind of grease it up a little bit. And then I think that this goes on, and with that ground, and I forget what else goes on, but I'll figure it out here shortly. Okay, so I've lubed up the switch, and what goes on next is this little ground bar. So what that does is like a rotary joint for a ground. So it has the back conductor, and it goes against this ground conductor here. Okay, so that's going to go on here, and then it's going to turn just about that distance right there. And then when this thing gets all compressed together, when this plate here goes on it, and this is keyed, and it was in this position. I gotta find the position. When we, like I say, the steering wheel is keyed, so I know it was in approximately this position right there. So that's the way it was when we took it off. And then this ground that goes inside here, and then that has a little clip on it that holds it in position. Wipe it off here. So that's going to go in there, and then that has a little tit. I don't know if you can see it or not. It turns, it goes right in there and turns. So that'll keep that grounded. So I'm going to pull it back apart, lube it all up, and then put it together. The next thing to do is to put our compressor, well, we're going to have to put our snap ring, that really tough little snap ring on there, get it started, and then put that compressor on it, push it all back together, and then get the snap ring in, and then we just have the clock spring. And we got to put the hazard switch back on, which just gets a screw. Put the clock spring back, put the steering wheel back on, and hook up the airbag. And then, of course, what'll be nasty is going back and plugging in that, putting together that connector for the for that switches, and then two, hooking up the pass key wires, getting that all plugged in, and getting that plug, that big connector behind the fuse box in. So that's where we're at now. Okay, so now I've got that, really it's the wheel lock and that thing, that plate that presses on there. I got the ground hooked up, ready to go. So now I need to get my little pusher and hook up. I've got the snap ring started in there. You can see it's kind of stuck into the groove right now where the snap ring goes for the clock spring. So I'll be hooking up that pusher, and it will push it down in position, and then we can put the snap ring on and then start the clock spring and go from there. Okay, so I pushed that plate down and got the snap ring on. Now, one thing you got to do or keep in mind, I didn't have a problem with it, but I could have. You know, here's your stop for your key, so you need to move that. You know, turn your wheel or move your key, thing just a hair and make sure you don't hit that stop, or that'll keep you from compressing that down. So now it is compressed down. I can just back off on this, and you definitely know it when you get that little key in there. It makes quite a snap, so you know when you've got it all the way in. So remove this compressor, and next I think is the clock spring, and then we're ready to go with the steering wheel, I think. I'm gonna have to pull this cable down. I really had that cable pulled way up in there, and it's the one with the I'm gonna take, well, yeah, I think I can take this out right now, that ground, line this thing up. It should line up with the ground, and I think it's keyed, and then it has a snap ring that fits there. So and that wire, you know, has the yellow wire with the big caution airbag sticker. So now I have to put the kind of the standard snap ring on, and then next will be the steering wheel. Okay, so now I've put that ground back on. I've got the wire for the airbag. I'll put some lube on there. Next is the nut. I must have not had a washer, I guess. I don't remember one, and I don't see one laying here. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this together, but I'm not going to tighten it up yet, because in case I have to pull it off, what I'm going to do is go down to my connector, push all those wires back in, put that key pass in, and then I'm going to hook up the electric and then try to start the car, because just in case something goes wrong, you know, that way it's easier to get it back together, or take it back apart, I mean. So we'll see here shortly. Stay tuned. Okay, so now I'm done under the dash here. I've got all my wires sticking out here with the little connectors. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to reach down underneath. I'm going to bend them up just a hair where I had to push them down just to make sure they bend up and get held. Now I wrote on the box here what the collars were, and then also I took and I wrote on the connector with magic marker what the wires. And the wires are kind of broke into two sets. I mean, there's the little wires which work for the cruise control, and then there's the bigger, heavier wires. So anyway, I'm going to put that together, put the little pass key in, and then it's really tough to get those wires back in there, that connector, and then screw in the big bolt or screw that holds it in. So I want to do that before I finish up putting the steering wheel back on. But I have taken it and put it on there. Here's the ground wire, here's the airbag wire, the nuts on, I just haven't tightened it yet. Okay, so I just now took the vehicle and I started car up. I turned the blinkers on. I turned the wiper delay on. I hit the washer. Can't say about the cruise control. But I started the car. So the big thing was I wanted to make sure that pass key thing was still working okay. So I'm going to go ahead and tidy up underneath here and hook everything up. Well, no, I'm not either. I'm gonna wait. I guess I gotta put the airbag on because I don't want to put that connector back together until I get the airbag in. So I guess I'm going to put the airbag on and tighten everything up, and then tidy up underneath. Now I have to take it out for a test drive, make sure the cruise control goes. So that's my next step. Okay, so I've tightened down the steering wheel, and I'm going to, I guess I have to turn the key so I can turn the wheel. I was thinking it moved easier before. So I'm going to go ahead and stick the airbag, stick the connector on the ground wire, and that should do it. Okay, this airbag is back on. I used a T30 Torx to tighten the screws on the back. Now, like I say, I'm going to come up underneath the dash here and plug in the airbag. The battery is still disconnected and still have the fuse pulled. So I'm going to put in the little clip there to keep it, just a little clip. I'm going to hang up my wire. I guess I can go ahead and put my fuse in, put the cover back on. It was number 18 fuse, 10 amp fuse that worked. There's my little resistor hanging down. Put the cover on the fuse box. Wow, okay. Snap this one piece of trim back in place, the wood trim around the column, and that is it. Woohoo! I mean, this has been probably a 5-hour job total, my guess. I didn't quite keep track of it because I had some interruptions and stuff, but it took a good 5 hours. So maybe if you have to do this job, by me videotaping this will help it. It won't take you so much. Now, One thing that took quite a while was getting those wires down through there. And I ended up taking that connector off. Now, you know, I cut the old one off to pull it back up through there. Maybe there's a better way. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's people that actually take these things and cut the wires off up inside the steering wheel and put them together there so they don't have to pull the wires up through. Or maybe it's easier by pulling that little plastic sleeve out of there. Maybe it would have worked out better for me. I'm not sure. There could be a better way. So you've seen what I've done. I'll try to edit this video together best I can. All I have left to do is to put the battery on and start her up. So I'll videotape that here shortly. Hopefully everything works. Clean up my tools, clean up my mess. Okay, so the old Caddy's back together. I'm going to take it out here for a test drive in a few minutes. One thing I want to say on the switch itself, I ordered this from Advanced Auto. It was like 64 bucks. There was two different ones available, and I just, you know, both of them said exact match. One was like $65, $69, and the other one was like $80. So I couldn't find anywhere for BorgWarner parts, you know, what the difference was. So this S3095 is what I ordered. Ended up fitting perfect. So what the other one for $20 more is, I have no idea. And then for the arm, for the actual lever, you know, I didn't really need the lever. I mean, the button was working fine. Really, the only time you need to replace the button or the arm is if something's broke on it, or the button doesn't work for the cruise control. But mine, you couldn't hardly read it anymore, and I just figured, what the heck. And they wanted like $100 everywhere, even AutoZone and Amazon, all those. But Rock Auto had this one here. It's made by an Indian company, OE Pro Automotive, SM186. So I bought it from Rock Auto. It was like $44, $42 or $44, and it worked perfect. And it seems to do just fine. So anyway, the parts, Advanced and Rock Auto, I'm sure Rock Auto probably had the same thing here. The only cool thing about Advanced, as you guys know, you buy so much online, you get 20% off, and then you get those Speedy Perks, or Speedy Perk, whatever it's called, and you end up getting $20 more off. So anyway, I like to use Advanced. And Rock Auto is super good too. So anyway, I'm going to get ready. I'm going to take it down the road. The last thing to find out is if the cruise control works. So we'll go take a little ride. Okay, so the old Caddy's back together. I'm going to take it out here for a test drive in a few minutes. One thing I want to say on the switch itself, I ordered this from Advanced Auto. It was like 64 bucks. There was two different ones available, and I just, you know, both of them said exact match. One was like $65, $69, and the other one was like $80. So I couldn't find anywhere for BorgWarner parts, you know, what the difference was. So this S3095 is what I ordered. Ended up fitting perfect. So what the other one for $20 more is, I have no idea. And then for the arm, for the actual lever, you know, I didn't really need the lever. I mean, the button was working fine. Really, the only time you need to replace the button or the arm is if something's broke on it, or the button doesn't work for the cruise control. But mine, you couldn't hardly read it anymore, and I just figured, what the heck. And they wanted like $100 everywhere, even AutoZone and Amazon, all those. But Rock Auto had this one here. It's made by an Indian company, OE Pro Automotive, SM186. So I bought it from Rock Auto. It was like $44, $42 or $44, and it worked perfect. And it seems to do just fine. So anyway, the parts, Advanced and Rock Auto, I'm sure Rock Auto probably had the same thing here. The only cool thing about Advanced, as you guys know, you buy so much online, you get 20% off, and then you get those Speedy Perks, or Speedy Perk, whatever it's called, and you end up getting $20 more off. So anyway, I like to use Advanced. And Rock Auto is super good too. So anyway, I'm going to get ready. I'm going to take it down the road. The last thing to find out is if the cruise control works. So we'll go take a little ride. Okay, so here's the delay. That's the maximum delay. I don't know how long it is, but it's probably like 40-45 seconds. So we'll go up to the fast delay, or short delay I should say. So there's the shortest one. Here's the next shortest one. So that all seems to work good. There's the low speed. So there it is on low. Here it is on high. Now I'm going to take it to off. It parks. Now I'm going to do mist. I turn it the other way. It just does a one-shot deal. Here's wash. You do a wash and it comes up. It washes. I don't know if all cars are like this, but it does like a wash for, I don't know, 10 seconds. So now I'm get her up here to cruise control speed. I've got the cruise control on, and I get up here, make sure I don't get hit. Okay, the cruise control light did come on. So right now I'm cruising at 45 miles an hour. I'm going to hit the accelerate button. I'm accelerating. So I'm up to 49 miles an hour. I'm going to hit it one more time. It should increment 1, but all that seems to work good. So that sounds like a good thing. I'm going to turn my blinker on while I'm here. Right blinker's working. Left blinker's working. My headlights are switching. I can hear the switch. I don't know if it works exactly because my headlights aren't on. Now I'm going to hit the button to decelerate 1 mile an hour. That appears to work. I'm going to go to coast. That appears to work. So everything seems to check out. So I believe that this little puppy has worked well. So those mornings where I need my wiper delay, I'm back. My old Caddy, 163,000, bought it brand new, 1991. I needed to go 3 more years. I got to get 30 years out of it. Now feel that I have my money's worth. So thanks for watching. Like I say, this is about a 5-hour job. Anybody wants to comment on a quicker, easier way, that'd be great, because maybe I'll have to replace it again in another 30 years. But I did the best I could. Hopefully what I did do, and the video, sorry for being so dark, but my garage was dark and I had no great lighting. So thank you very much.